the Missouri Orthopedic Institute Clinic will get rolling out again on Saturdays for folks. Dr. Richard Ma joining us from the Missouri Orthopedic Institute. Appreciate you taking the time. This like the fourth or fifth time that you've been in it.
Yeah, I think it's probably like at least the fourth time.
Okay.
So I always look forward to coming to hang out with you guys.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, it's just Guy. No.
Yeah, that's right.
I had somebody mention that. It's like, if you're a solo act, the closers is grammatically incorrect. But we're going to leave it as it is because we're exploring some opportunities with the J School. But for you, as high school football season gets started, that Saturday clinic, it's a free walk-in clinic for folks. How important was it to move it from Friday night when everybody's just like, we're done, we're going home, to move it to Saturday so that way you've got a little bit of a window to monitor your kid?
Yeah, I think it was a big move for us. This is our second year doing it, and we saw a lot more interest in terms of the clinic on Saturdays. And so we had definitely a lot more turnout on Saturdays. And so we're looking forward to the second year and hoping to make this a consistent thing so that people know it's a free resource that they can use, especially if you have an injured athlete on Friday and it's an injury that you're not sure if he needs to go to the emergency room, and we can take care of it in our clinic.
Well, and we're coming up week number 1. You've gone through fall camp. You've gone through all the conditioning. You've spent the off season weightlifting, and I'm sure the first reaction when that injury happens is, how the heck can you get hurt? You've been working out and you're in shape. So how can that first injury happen?
Well, sometimes it's just bad luck. So you can be as conditioned as you want to be, but sometimes it is just truly an unfortunate instance where something happens that's out of your control. So we're hoping, obviously, everybody stays healthy and have an awesome season. But if one of those injuries happen to you, we're happy to see you on Saturday and get that worked up and hopefully get you back on the field.
Most common one that you see especially after the first week of games?
Well, I would say just the most common injuries I see actually, just in my personal experience, have been hand fractures.
Okay.
So things get stepped on, pulled wrong, and then they break your fingers. So that's the most common thing I see in my past 6 years doing the injury clinic.
And I've had them. I've had the. That's why I quit catching, because the thumb kept dislocating. But broken finger, a lot of times you just tape them back together and go out if you're a lineman.
That's right. Well, fortunately, a lot of these things we can buddy tape it up and get you back on the field so that you can get back to your team.
Dr. Richard Ma with us, Missouri Orthopedic Clinic. The other one that can put you out, and it's really where we see it in the NFL a lot. And I saw with Braylon Speaks with the Kansas City Chiefs, sprained MCL but tearing the meniscus. The inner workings of a knee can be somewhat intimidating for a lot of people when they start hearing ACL and PCL and MCL and meniscus and the patellar tendon and all the rest of that stuff. Just explain for folks as they go through the knee health and how important that is to be able to maintain that.
Well, I think the knee is a component of multiple different parts. I like to think of it as an organ. And so those two parts that you mentioned are two different entities. I think fortunately with most medial collateral ligament injuries, which is the MCL tear, those are oftentimes successfully treated without surgery. The meniscus is a different animal altogether. They are very intimately associated, meaning they're right next to each other. And so, with meniscus injuries, depending on what they look like, oftentimes those things are going to lead you some time away from the field. But with the MCL injuries, they are oftentimes able to be managed successfully without any surgery.
And then, of course, the big one, the ACL.
Yes.
Are there predictor? I mean, we've talked in the past, and with you, and especially with the research, are there better predictors now to determine whether or not an athlete is just standing there at risk for an ACL, not because they heard it standing there, but just because of their physique?
So there are definitely some predictors, things that you may not be able to modify, and we know gender is a big one, and we think that may be associated with the some of it, at least, with how the female body is made, potentially with wider hips, and then their knee valgus, meaning how much how their knees is shaped, which may make them torque the knee in a certain way that may be predisposing.
They kind of knock knee it.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. So some of the things you can't change, and then some of the things you can, which is conditioning, neuromuscular training. So some of the things you can train away from, and then some things, is not modifiable. So I think the answer is partially yes, And then some of those things you just can't predict, which is the circumstance of the game, and what happens in the game, and how the athlete reacts to what happens in front of them.
Braces. We see them on offensive and defensive linemen, and they've got the brace on there with
Absolutely.
the big nut. Are you a proponent of a brace, or is this something where, especially at that age, 16, 17 years of age, that maybe the brace isn't the best of ideas?
I think different orthopedic surgeons have different opinions about this, but for me, I think it's sport specific. So you mentioned the linemen. I think individuals where there are big people falling all over the place, I think those braces have been shown to reduce ligament injuries, especially like the MCL injuries, where people fall on you, you have the brace on, it may be somewhat protective. But there's no great research that says the braces prevents certain kind of ligament injuries like ACL injuries. So I think I look at it sport specific, and so for some sports I do like braces.
Do you work with the physician on if you're the parent and I've got my offensive lineman, he's a big kid getting ready to play? Do you work with the physician on picking out the right brace?
Absolutely. And so I have those parents come in and they will ask me about bracing their kid, and I try to pick out ones that are typically a little more custom, so they can actually run and do things in rather than the off-the-shelf brace type. So if they come to see me, I tend to steer them to things that are a little more custom, like the ones you see on Saturday when the Mizzou players are out on the field.
Can you get them with like the tiger striping and stuff like that?
They come in all different kind of colors, and some of these are actually pretty impressive, and I might want one.
I mean, just to hang up on the wall.
That's right. That's right.
And you can point to it and go, back in the day. Right?
Right.
Dr. Richard Ma with us, Missouri Orthopedic Institute. You've done, we talked a little bit about off the air, rugby sevens. You presented a couple of papers and some research in Australia. For the ladies, and now rugby is becoming bigger and bigger. We were out in Colorado, and we were visiting with at a farmer's market of all places, and there's a rugby sevens
absolutely
kiosk, and they were talking about getting their clubs going. For the ladies who are playing rugby sevens, what are some of the things to watch out for on that?
Well, I think for U.S. girls playing rugby, this is it's a little bit different compared to some of the countries that have been playing rugby for a long time, because I think our girls may not have grown up with collision sports like guys, because we have American football. So for them, like tackling techniques, taking the collision, these are all new things that they may never been exposed to playing other sports. And so a lot of emphasis are involved in teaching them the proper tackling techniques, making sure it's a shoulder tackle instead of leading with the head. These concepts may be foreign to them versus the young boys who grow up playing American football. They've gotten some teaching, and so I think for girls it definitely is a challenge. And then the other thing we've learned is that girls may have a harder time falling gracefully, and we talked about this previously before. That's one of the things that I think our research shows, that the American girls may not do as well falling, because they seem to get injured, making impact with the ground more than guys.
Fall like a sack of potatoes, right?
Well, you want to try to not necessarily be like a bag of potatoes. I think you want to try to cushion your fall a little bit. So anticipate the fall. Because
it seems like sometimes everybody the injuries hurt or happen when they tense up, and then you pop that shoulder out of you get the AC injury.
Right.
So okay, Dr. Richard Ma with us here, and which leads us to falling, concussions. The clinics are free clinics on Saturday mornings over at the Missouri Orthopedic Institute. You don't have to call for an appointment, but you just show up and get on in there. You'll be evaluated. And concussions, I know we've talked in the past about making sure how important it is, the baseline. And most of the kids that have gone through football physicals now have that baseline. So Friday night, first game, Saturday morning, kids not maybe acting quite so with it. Maybe out of it just a smidge. What are some of the warning signs or some of the markers that mom or dad need to be aware of?
Well, I think with concussions, sometimes it's kind of difficult with it, just because the presentation of it can encompass a variety of symptoms, including headaches, nausea, or just difficulty to concentrate. And so these may seem like very vague symptoms, but they are within the continuum of symptoms that could be in a concussion. So I think for parents, I think just being aware, and making sure that you watch your kid, and also having an open dialogue with the kid. If they don't feel right, and they've taken a hit the night before, those are things just to kind of be mindful of. And I think you should have a short straw to take them to get it medically evaluated, so that they can be treated.
When in doubt, check it out. Right.
That's right. And when in doubt, also stay out of the game.
Yeah.
I think.
Okay. Yeah. And how? I mean, are you on the? I can't remember now. Sidelines.
For certain sports.
For certain sports. Okay.
Right.
For you, what do you look for when you're like, oh, that didn't look right? Now, what do you look for? Well,
I think for me, you have to definitely pay attention to the game. But the kids that are, that they take a hit, so you have to kind of watch the action. If they're shaking their head, or if they're kind of stumbling a little bit, those are the part of the kids that you just want to kind of potentially maybe pull out to the sideline and just check them a little bit and make sure that they're all doing fine. Because sometimes it's just those fine nuances, or if it looks like a hit that's just out of the ordinary. We've all seen people tackle, and then we recognize when a tackle is a little extraordinary. Those are the kids that you kind of want to just maybe get a chance to kind of chat with a little bit and make sure that they are doing fine. But especially the ones that display symptoms on the field, where they're staggering a little bit, or they're veering off, or they're being a little bit forgetful.
Go to the wrong huddle.
That's right. So I think you just have to be vigilant.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Dr. Richard Ma, Missouri Orthopedic Institute, with us here. And as we wrap this up again, it's a free clinic on Saturday mornings over at the MOI, and it's just a walk-in, and it's a couple hours long. But there are specialists available, so if referrals need to be done, that can be taken care of there as well. For you on a Friday night, what's the best part about the football season?
Yeah,
college, high school getting kicked off.
I think it's just nostalgia.
Okay.
I can't say exactly I was a football player because I was just the kicker.
Yeah.
But
hey, nothing wrong.
That's right. No, nothing wrong. You can win games sometimes.
Well, you're a bit of an odd duck a lot, but
that's right. But I think just the energy. Yeah. Being at a high school football game in the crisp, cool air on Friday nights, and football. I mean, I think that's, in some way, being not from this country, that's America for me, like in terms of sports, Friday night. So that's the part that's the most exciting to me. And like I mentioned to you off the air, I think it is busier for us as sports physicians, but it's also exciting with all these sports kind of starting back up, and seeing all these kids get excited about the upcoming academic year. Is
there a difference in the collegiate athlete versus the high school athlete?
I think different in terms of physique. But the thing that's really interesting and is really cool to see as a team physician is that the passion for the game sometimes is exactly the same. So even if they don't have the same caliber physique-wise, they love the game at high school level just as much as they do in the college level, if not more sometimes. So I think that's really neat to see.
All right, Dr. Richard Ma, Missouri Orthopedic Institute, and you catch him every now and again on the sidelines at an event, or maybe a Saturday morning over at the Missouri Orthopedic Institute for their free walk-in clinic. Again, that's on Saturday mornings over at the Missouri Orthopedic Institute. And it's a good spot, especially the concussions, awareness of that. Please, as parents, be aware. It really helps you down the road. Being the parent of a kid who had 2 concussions, it's incredibly important. So be aware of all that. And when in doubt, like I said, when in doubt, get it checked out. And you can do it on Saturday mornings over at the Missouri Orthopedic Institute. Dr. Ma, thank you for the time. I appreciate it. What's just real quick? What's on the docket for you outside of sports? You've got some papers and stuff to be presenting pretty soon.
That's right. So I just like I had mentioned off the air a little bit. Traveled back out to Australia to talk a little bit about rugby over there with the Australians, and then the following year I'll be traveling to Japan for a month for a traveling fellowship. So I look forward to some of these international cultural exchanges, and it's always lead to new research ideas. So it's awesome.
All right, very cool. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, sir.
You can join the conversation anytime. Call 442-8255. The Closers on KFRU and KLIK.